Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Wild Woman Network, a show for creative vagabonds, thinkers, and innovators. I'm your host, Sandra Lee Schubert, and welcome to the show. Well, hello, everyone. I am here with my guest, Jed Luckless. Jed is a New York City area musician who performs original music and streams his shows online in the virtual world of Second Life. His improvisational, I can't talk now, style has earned him the nickname of Jammin Jed, and his spontaneity makes performance a unique experience for the listener. What a way to mess up an intro. Jed, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. I'm doing well. That must have been some strong yogurt you had today.
It was very strong yogurt that just makes me not be able to pronounce simple words, and it happens from time to time. It was from Trader Joe's. It had mango in it, and there you go. So welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me here. It's great to be on the show today. Thanks.
Before we get into it, I want to give a shout out to Homegrown Radio, Homegrown Radio NJ, get that right so people can find it, and Peter Marchetta, who was hosting you at his show in an internet radio station, happens to be right down the block from me, and you were playing, and Peter pulled me in, and so I got to listen to your performance live, and that's how we connected. So shout out to the both of them for having that all happen.
Definitely, that was a fun day when I came down there to play on Homegrown Radio, and Pete's a good buddy of mine. We go way back, and I've done a number of benefits for homegrownradionewjersey.org, which is online radio that very, very supportive of independent musicians like myself. So Pete's always been a big supporter of mine, and I love him, and I love him even more for introducing us. And that was where we met down at the studio, and so happy to have made that connection. Thanks, Pete.
Yes, it was fun. It's really been a great experience for me to have it down the block, so I can go listen to live music at almost any time, so it's fun. I just want to let everybody know the chat room is open, and you've got to scroll down the show page to find it at the bottom. It's kind of annoying, but it's there somewhere. So if you have questions for Jed, you have to log in. Otherwise, we may not be able to hear what you have to say through whatever. I don't know. I mean, it's late in the afternoon. I've had yogurt. I'm sorry, Jed. What can I tell you? It's just the brain hasn't kicked in yet.
No apologies. It'll probably make the conversation with me go much smoother when you're in that state of mind. So.
Well, we had so much to talk about because we had Jed and I talked a little bit last night, and the show originally was going to be 45 minutes, and then we said, it's got to be an hour because there were just too many things to cover, and we may not get to it. I mean, the fun thing was when I met Jed, he was playing. He was playing by himself, but he brought his band with him through sort of technology that was at his feet. And so, even though he was sitting there or standing there with his guitar, he could utilize all this gear and have a band there, too, and add some extra music. So I just thought that was great fun and kind of fascinating and interesting how you did that and how you kind of pulled that all off. So that was fun. Can you talk a tiny bit about that? There is a video on YouTube, correct? It's on YouTube, right?
Yes, on YouTube,
gear?
Yeah. Called Jed's Gear Tour, I think it is. So you can look that up, Jed Luckless Gear Tour, and that takes you through a tour of the gear you're talking about, which is a big part of what I do, because I do a lot of, as you call it, kind of one-man band type stuff, where I use some looping technology and do live looping. Nothing's ever pre-recorded, so it's all in real time, spontaneous and improvisational, but the equipment allows me to lay down different layers and patterns and rhythms and essentially be my own rhythm guitarist, and then take over the role of lead guitarist or even percussionist in some cases, because I'll lay down some percussion to go along with it as little backbones. It's definitely a big part of my sound, and what I do, and really allows me to kind of get pretty far out there as far as a one-man jam band, to get to that jam energy on my own without anybody else. Of course, it's not the same as playing with other musicians at all, which we'll talk about, I'm sure. But yeah, I'm thankful for the technology. It's very useful. I also do a lot of acoustic guitar through a lot of heavy pedals and effects, which if you take a look at that gear tour on YouTube, you'll see how that all works out.
Yeah, no, that was kind of fun. I watched that and I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting. I mean, I have no talent musically or otherwise. Well, I have other talents, but not musically. So I'm always fascinated by how people do that. So according to your bio on jedluckless.com, you picked up your guitar, your first guitar, or a guitar, I don't know, it's your first guitar, at age 12. And right. you around there, which I believe I'm sorry to say, every boy in America seems to pick up a guitar or something at that age. I don't know. It seems to be a magical age for
definitely a lot of influences. Yeah, definitely, and there were a lot of things I think that pushed me to kind of do that, including some of the music I was listening to, some of the television I was watching. I was a big Partridge Family fan, and so I think the idea of touring around in a bus playing music really spoke to me at a very early age, and that was part of it.
So I have not yet met a musician who credits his influence as early influence as the Partridge Family. I applaud your willingness to cite them as inspiration.
Big David Cassidy fan. Although I'm not really able to pull off the choker look. I've tried. I like that look, but I can't pull it off. But obviously there's a lot of other musical influences as well beyond the Partridge Family. But as a kid, I do remember being drawn to music very early in those, even when it was in that kind of child, youth entertainment format. But then later, I was definitely influenced by some rock and roll heavies. Jimmy Page, obviously, big influence on me. Led Zeppelin, and some of the harder stuff like Angus Young and Joe Perry from Aerosmith and AC/DC and that type of music. And then later, really, I got into kind of the Grateful Dead and Phish scene and all that stuff.
Well, somebody on the chat room said that you might play a Partridge Family tune for me sometime. So there you go.
It's definitely been done. I'd have to check my archives, but I know for a fact I've played at least one or two of those. Probably Come On, Get Happy, and there's a tune called Stephanie that I really like to play from one of those episodes. So it does happen.
Come On, Get Happy? Yes, that's funny. So let's go a little further, and part of what you talk about on your bio, and part of what I knew from hearing you, and when I heard you at Homegrown, you're influenced by the Grateful Dead, you're influenced by Phish, and you sort of admit to that readily that you're inspired by them. And you had a tribute band named Star 69. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's Star 69 is really a group of musicians in New York City. We call it more of a collective. And we play together from time to time. And some of the guys in it actually go back to an earlier band of mine, which was called Gurgle. And we played around New York City around when I was in college. Wow, it's going way back now, 20 years probably almost. But so some of these guys now, they play in a collective called Star 69, led by a guitarist and good friend of mine named Rob Varconi. And they do really now just strictly Grateful Dead tribute. So for a while I wasn't playing with them, and we had a history together, and I reconnected with them at some point and started sitting in with some of the Star 69 shows, and rapidly realized that there was a huge number of Grateful Dead songs that I didn't know, and didn't know, nearly a significant portion of the Grateful Dead catalog. And these guys who were major Deadheads, which I never really was, these guys they would throw out tunes, at the toss of a coin, and just
be able to run with them, any Grateful Dead tune, because they were just ingrained in their heads. So if I was going to continue to play with them, I really kind of had to bone up on my Grateful Dead material. And so I started really a process of every time they would play a song, if I didn't know it or wasn't familiar with it, I would go out and learn it and put it in my book and learn it. So, after a short amount of time of trying to keep up with them, I had a couple hundred Dead tunes that I could play. And so it was a process of really training to play with some friends of mine, but also it really was an enlightening experience for me as far as the Grateful Dead music, because like I said, I didn't really grow up as a Deadhead. I've been a Phish fan for a long time, and understand the similarities between the types of music, but I never really understood the power of the Grateful Dead's songs and catalog until I went through that exercise.
Okay. Well, it's interesting because, I knew somebody that grew up learning classical music. He was a child prodigy and played classical music at an early age, and then went on to become a punk rocker or something. It was kind of interesting. But I know that the experience of having to absorb that music, even though it was classical music, really sort of set some sort of foundation for him about how he then took music on. So even though punk rock was sort of a leap for him as an artist, the experience of having absorbed all that music really worked in his favor. So I don't know if I'm making sense with that, but absorbing all this music, do you think it changed your music, or did it? How does it influence what you play on your own? I guess that's what I want to know.
Well, I think any music that you're exposed to as a musician, affects you and becomes a part of your musical consciousness, right? And some things you're drawn more to, or grab a better hold on your musical soul and kind of infest what you're doing with their style or their message or whatever it might be that you're drawn to. So I think, unavoidably, yes, listening to so much Grateful Dead music and playing so much Grateful Dead music unavoidably does affect the way I play. But it's also the reverse of that. The way I play unavoidably affects the way that my Grateful Dead covers sound and my Phish covers sound, because to be honest, I'm not very good at tribute. I don't play like Jerry Garcia plays. So if I'm trying to sound like the Dead, it's difficult for me at times. It's more that I'm honoring the material and trying to recreate the emotional experience of hearing the material live in a spontaneous manner, not trying to sound like the Grateful Dead. Right.
So you're not when I think of cover tunes, I think of, and no offense to any bar bands out there, I apologize, but bar bands that just sort of play covers straight through, and it sounds just like the cover of, just like what the band does, more or less, obviously, but, there's no improvising within that. And what I'm thinking about was one of the sets that you have on YouTube that you played at Homegrown, where you play Stella Blue at the end of that particular section that's on YouTube. And I listened to the other to the Grateful Dead version of Stella Blue, and personally I liked your version better. And that version plays, it plays in my head all the time. I'm hearing that in the back of my head, So I thought that was interesting, because so many times I hear musicians just mimic exactly the music, but I at least felt with the Stella Blue piece, and you did other pieces too, that took on another quality that was your own within that, and I that was really interesting to hear that it just had a different quality. I mean, it was still obviously the song that it was, but it had a quality that you brought to it that I thought was yours and not somebody else's.
Well, thank you very much. That's certainly an amazing, compliment to say you liked it that much. And again, it just really backs up my point that there's a lot of me in whatever song I'm playing, and a lot of my style in whatever I'm doing, no matter how much I want to try and sound like the source material. And most of the time I don't want to try and sound like the source material. I want to kind of bring my own spin to it. And, as far as kind of replicating the same thing time and time again, as far as a solo or a specific riff or something, it's hard enough for me to repeat my own solos or ideas from time to time, much less to repeat all of Jerry's, So it's all about spontaneity for me. A lot of my music is about spontaneity, and again, kind of bringing my own style to it, but trying to create that same emotional experience that you had with my version of the song, right? That people have had with Jerry's version of the song. So, and a lot of that does have to do with the underlying material as well. The song itself, it happens to be an amazing song and a beautiful song. So that's a huge part of it, and that I'm just channeling that, right?
Right. And that's what makes it interesting, because I sort of was thinking a little bit about the whole Grateful Dead thing, and I have a sister who's 5 years older than me, so I was in grade school and going to Grateful Dead concerts, and just, but but I was also like, just completely young for it at that point, and even though I had this experience of going to all these concerts, it wasn't until later that I could appreciate that music for what it was. I couldn't completely appreciate it at the time. I sort of got something, but I wasn't quite there yet. I was just somewhere else. I was a Monkees fan. What can I tell you, Mickey Dolenz? What can I say?
Hear you.
So,
I hear you. I also, like I said, was not a Deadhead originally, and I was lucky enough to see Jerry a few times, in the late '80s and early '90s. When some friends dragged me to Dead shows, but I never really got it back then. I didn't really connect with it, and I really didn't get it until years later when I finally got on the bus. But I wish I had those shows back now, obviously. But that's not good. So the Grateful Dead.
Well, I was just going to say, despite I think that early listening, regardless of whether you can appreciate it at that moment, sort of it influences you at some point, whether you realize it or not. It comes back in some way.
Yeah,
I think.
And I definitely have to credit. I don't want to spend the whole time talking about the Grateful Dead. Obviously, there's a lot of other music that influences me, and there's obviously Phish is a huge influence on me as well. But beyond that, a number of bands and musical styles that we can talk about. But on the Grateful Dead front, just two quick things. One, I do want to give a shout out to Bobby Weir, who recently announced that Rat Dog was suddenly canceling their entire tour. So not a lot of information on our friend Bobby, but we all wish him well, and we're thinking of him and hoping everything's okay. And then just finally, I would say about it that really the Grateful Dead and that whole again exercise of learning a bunch of tunes to play and being able to play such a big catalog had a big part in really Jed's origin and Jed and the Second Life aspect of Jed of going into Second Life and doing the virtual concerts, because I took that concept and really wanted to take that Grateful Dead experience and bring it to that virtual world. And so that's kind of how I got involved in Second Life as well, was through the notion of being able to perform some of that music as a solo act in Second Life.
Right. And so right now you're in the middle of a tour that's happening in Second Life, which I'm not a part of, but I can hear you on Ustream, so you sort of do those both at the same time, and you've got this. Can you explain a little bit how that works for people who don't know about Second Life, like me?
Yeah.
And how you're doing a tour within that virtual world.
Absolutely, I was thinking that because a lot of people might not know anything about Second Life, and Second Life is it's a virtual world if you think of it on the internet on your PCs that you can log onto, a three-dimensional virtual world. And if you think of it kind of in terms of an online video game and the types of online video games that people sign on and play, like Worlds of Warcraft or those types of games, it's kind of similar to that type of environment where people from all over the world are logging in to one system and interacting in a three-dimensional virtual world through means of having a virtual avatar that represents them, and then as well as by communicating via chat, voice in some cases, and in a lot of cases live music. And so one thing I learned about Second Life, or had heard before I was really a Second Life person, was that there was a live music scene going on in there, and that musicians were streaming their music into this virtual world, and virtual audiences were coming and listening to their music. And that really interested me. So I logged on and got involved and did some research, and pretty soon was up and running, streaming my music into Second Life, into the virtual world. So created an avatar and logged on and started playing Jed Luckless shows. And initially, again, it was kind of focused around that Grateful Dead act. I had put together kind of this, as part of my practicing of Grateful Dead tunes, I would sit down and play a full 2-set show, just like the Dead would, with, barely a set list, and make my way through it. That was how I would rehearse. So now I could do that. I took that act into Second Life. And, when I first got into Second Life, one of the very first places I went to in Second Life, as far as there's different kind of areas, if you think of them as cities, they call them simulations in Second Life, but just think of it as a different area or geographical region or town or city or a venue. One of the first places I went to was a place called Prankster Isle, because I was searching for kind of Grateful Dead areas. And Prankster Isle had this cool stage, virtual stage, and the Merry Prankster was the name of the venue. And I met a woman there named Nancy, and she basically explained to me how it all worked and got me hooked up on all my equipment and how to stream music. And the reason I wanted to give a shout out to the Merry Prankster is I'm actually going to be playing there tonight in Second Life at 9 p.m. Eastern tonight. I will be at the Merry Prankster. It's the first time I'm actually going back there in about 4 years. I haven't been back there in a long, long time, so it's going to be a super fun show tonight at the Prankster. It was really the first place I landed in Second Life. And then from there, I did move on to, I found a sim called Dark Star, which is a labor of love by a friend of mine named Starling Glitterbuck, who built an entire 3D simulation based on really the canon of the Grateful Dead music. So everything in it really is an homage to things in the Grateful Dead world. So when I got there, I basically was like, oh, I'm home. Here I am. If I want to do a Grateful Dead act, this is the place to do it. And they even have a virtual amphitheater there that recreates the wall of sound that the Grateful Dead used as their backdrop on the stage for many years. So it was the perfect place to kind of grow that act. So that's how I got into Second Life, and that's what it is. So I plug in my guitar and I play music here in my studio, and it goes out over the internet to people all over the world who are logged into this virtual environment and dancing virtually in front of a graphical video game type stage.
That's so interesting. Well, we have one of your Second Life people here on the chat room, BT Piers, and who's only chatting with me.
Beachy's actually my PR manager in Second Life, so she's been working with me pretty much since day one to help spread the music and help everything go smoothly. And I'm really still I'm even after 5 years, because I got on Second Life in 2009, so we've been doing this for 5 years, and I'm still a noob as far as Second Life is concerned. So without Beachy, I'd have pretty ugly looking virtual feet. I'll leave it at that.
I did say I was going to mention the feet, but you
I beat you to it.
You beat me to it. I said, well, it's all about the feet. All right, whatever. Okay. It was great fun. But people can also watch you live on Ustream too. Also, will be doing that also tonight, or
correct?
No.
Yeah, absolutely. I always try to stream everything over Ustream as well for people who aren't in Second Life. So if you're not in Second Life, or not interested in getting in Second Life, of course, if you want to come on, there's plenty of people in the Jed Head family that can help you get acclimated. But if you don't and you want to watch live video or listen to the live audio of my shows, you can do it at jedluckless.tv, www.jedluckless.tv. And I pretty much stream all of my Second Life shows there. And a lot of the shows with my band that I do live, I also stream from real life venues, and the band streams in Second Life as well. So.
Right. Yeah, and that's sort of how I get to watch you is through the Ustream channel, which helps because I'm not yet in Second Life. But we'll work up to that maybe. I don't know. We'll see. I'm having kind of like enough trouble in this particular life. I'm not sure if I want to add a Second Life to it. I don't know. We'll figure that out. So we've got some music to play of yours. This is your original music. And we're coming up to the first one, which is Play Back Again. Do you want to talk about it a little first? Do you want me to play it and then talk about it?
I'll just say a little something about it. Yeah, I'll set it up just to bridge from, how I got there from doing the Grateful Dead stuff. So for a while I did do the kind of Grateful Dead act in Second Life and really trying to create that full Grateful Dead experience, 2 sets of music with a set break in between and a nice long show. So I was doing that for a good year probably before I started playing originals in Second Life. I've written original music and been playing original music all my life. But then I slowly started bringing it into Second Life and doing more shows where I was playing originals as well as other stuff like Phish. And really decided that in 2010 I would put out my first solo album under the Jedtainment Records label. So we created our own record label called Jedtainment and put out the first Jed Luckless solo album, which had some material that went back a ways, as a songwriter, but also had some brand new material at the time. And we put that out in 2010. And this cut is off of that album. It's called Back Again. And it was one of the new material that was put on the album at the time that I had written around that time in 2010.
All right. Right, so I'm going to play that, but Jed, I will not be muting you, so,
okay.
Don't do anything strange while it's playing, just saying. And we're going to listen.
I don't know what you could mean by that. I'm going to eat some yogurt.
Okay, you go eat some yogurt, and I'm going to play your music. Let's go.
Girl that I did ever see, legs as long as the river, she made me shiver, but you can't go back again. She said her name was Emily. Now when I hear that song, it means the world to me. As bright as moonlight, she made me feel right, but you can't go back again. We had a hell of a night, stayed up till the morning light, couldn't say goodbye when the sun did rise. And we both knew it was time to go, so she turned and left without a woe, but I thought I saw a tear fall from her eyes.
We are back on, So, Jed, let's talk a little bit about the music. What was going on there? What was happening?
In that song? Back again?
Yeah. Well, I sort of know what was happening, but,
yeah,
the song itself was relatively clear, but how do you get to write that song?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a good example of the song being inspired by a couple different things in real life, and like a lot of my songs, even when they're inspired by things in real life, they kind of take on a life of their own, and they're not exactly, realism per se. So I'll merge a lot of things together to kind of go for a feeling in a lot of cases, or just a message or a theme. In this one, it's kind of based on someone I knew, in a relationship I had, and kind of that went in a certain direction, and you couldn't kind of go back again. But it's also kind of combined with my love of Tennessee. I actually love Tennessee, and I was in Nashville at the time, and so it's kind of trying to be a little bit of a Nashville song as well. So there's always a few things going on in my mind, usually some musical and some lyrical that I'm thinking about when I'm writing the songs.
It's interesting because I know, just with the writing process for myself, that there is always that element of truth somewhere within the scope of what you're writing, but the writing itself can just take on a whole nother flavor when you maybe go in a direction where you think, well, what would have happened if we went in this direction, we went in this place, what would have happened? And you can do that within the writing. You sort of can take a piece of truth and sort of change it something else, if that makes sense. So how do you feel that you do that with the writing?
And in that way, it's a little bit like a piece of clay, right? So no matter what you start out with or what you start out and intend to do, ultimately it might change as you're trying to form it, because it's malleable. I mean, it's malleable rather, and it has no specific form. And even if you're trying to get to a specific form, sometimes you can't get it there. But you're right. There's always a kernel of truth, because I think as a writer of any type, they tell you a lot of times, write what you know, right? So you're writing from either your experience or your emotional feelings or your emotional experience as a human being, and hoping that it's going to be relatable to your listeners or your readers or your viewers or whatever your art form happens to be. So I definitely try to do that, and capture my experience and relay it to others in hopes that we can connect through it. But there's also a type of creativity that comes to me that's really just about letting myself go to the cosmos, kind of, and letting things come to me. So I really try to listen to what the world is telling me, or melodies that might just pop in my head, and really try to let some of it just drive itself. And in some cases, I find that songs do come from somewhere completely outside of myself, and I'll look back at the song after it's written and go, wow, I really don't even know how I wrote that or where it came from. It wasn't a conscious process. So I think it's a mix. Sometimes it's a conscious process, and sometimes it's an unconscious process. And I think that's part of the fun of it, is drifting in and out of consciousness.
Right. It's being in and out of consciousness. I like that. Well, I wrote something on Facebook this morning because I keep waking up with music playing in my head, and I'm always like, what's going on in my brain that I wake up with songs, just not songs I create, but just random songs that exist in the world playing in my head. It's like, where does that come from? That the cosmic radio station that's not even having anything to do with my alarm. I'm just waking up with a particular song that's going on in my head. Today it was Paul Simon. I don't know. Tomorrow it could be something completely different. But it is kind of fascinating what can come out of your head when you least expect it. I mean, you just never know what might pop in. What might pop in there.
Yeah, and the power of music. I don't think we even really, know the full power of music down to that level where,
things are popping in your head, but I sometimes I like to believe that those things are popping in your head for a reason, right? And so there's some sort of message there, a cosmic, thing to look at. Why is it Paul Simon, and why is that song in my head, and is it some sort of message to myself that I'm trying to give myself, So I think music's really powerful. It takes us back to certain places in time, certain events. It takes us back to certain people. It connects us to all these different things just through, a few notes of music.
Right. Yeah, no, it is really kind of interesting how the sort of that radio station just kind of pulls up something. I mean, I'm not really sure what She Moves On means to me this morning, but that was what popped into my head. It's got some significance. I'll have to probably figure that out at some point. But we've got a couple of pieces more that we're going to play from you, and we're coming up to the second one, which is Still in Love With You. And do you want to talk about that a little bit before we play it?
Yeah, absolutely. So Still in Love With You, this cut is actually off the Jed Luckless Band CD. So, one of my main goals once I kind of was playing music in Second Life, I very early on decided that I wanted to assemble a band to join me and be able to play virtually in Second Life. There wasn't as much of that. There's a lot of singer-songwriters that play music in Second Life, a lot of very, very talented singer-songwriters playing live music in Second Life all over. That's not unique to me. There are less bands and collectives of multiple musicians playing there. So, even less kind of real, like, again, that rock concert kind of experience of playing two sets of music, Grateful Dead, Phish, jam band, and original music, and kind of get that act going in Second Life. So I did that in 2011. I hooked up with an amazing drummer. His name's Eric Stramiello, and he kind of became the other backbone of the Jed Luckless Band. And initially, he was backing me up just on drums in my Second Life shows. Some of the listeners might remember those shows where Stram was sitting on the drums behind me. And then we added Mr. Kenny Kaufman on bass, an amazingly versatile bass player and musician. And then finally we locked in with Mark Guttenplan on keys, an amazing, a multi-talented individual on keys and guitar and bass and vocals and songwriting. And thus was born the Jed Luckless Band, and we played shows in Second Life at a variety of venues virtually, as well as streaming the shows on my Ustream channel, as you mentioned. And we also started branching out and playing real-life shows here in the New York area, mostly in the Westchester County area north of New York City. And we play around here in real life at several venues. And in 2013, we released our first album as a band. It's called Roll the Tape, and Still in Love With You is the opening cut on that album.
All right. Let's hear Still in Love With You. Sure.
better way. Seems to me I'm always waiting just for one more day. Usually it's me who's telling myself that the best is yet to be. When the day's beginning, I'm happy where I'm at. When the day is done, I find I'm not all glad at that. Usually it's just another side of myself I refuse to see. I love you, but I just don't know. I love you, but I got to go. I hate to say it's true. I'm still in love with you.
That's wonderful. We were having, I was almost didn't come back on because there was a little Jed Love Fest in the chat room, so I got a little distracted there for a sec. So I do want to give out in the chat room is Ruby Al's Roost is there. I'm hoping I'm saying that correct, but she's in the chat room too.
I told you I'm a tech noob. I wasn't able to even get into the chat room, but hey Ruby, it's good. Ruby's a good fan, good supporter.
So there's a lot of love for you, Jed, around you and your feet. It's just all over the place. So
I feel blessed, really. I do. You know, all kidding aside, I feel blessed for my fans and the support that I get from all my fans and who really are my friends. Also, you know, because all my fans become my friends because we're one big family. And I want to just send out a big thank you to everybody out there who supports my music and comes to my shows and listens.
Well, I know Ruby and Beachy are kissing in the chat room, so I just, stuff is happening there. I'm just telling you, there are things going on. So let's talk about Still in Love with You. So, where did that come from, other than whatever?
That tune actually goes back very, very far. Yeah, I wrote that tune a long time ago. Just kind of about a situation of having to, if something doesn't work out and kind of you have to move on even though you really still love somebody. So I believe that love is a thing that has many different variations and colors and flavors. So, but all situations aren't always the best situations, So sometimes you move on and you change things, but you really do still love somebody. So that's kind of what the song's about.
Okay, very good. And your style is just because there's some pieces that sound a little more folky. I don't want to say folky, maybe that's not the right word.
Yeah.
We're listening to some. No, okay, and some of the pieces, and then you got this one's got a little more rock and roll sort of beat to it. So you've got a couple of things that you touch on in your music. So it's, as you said, it's just not one influence and you just play that. You go through a couple of different styles.
It's very varied, and it really goes back to my musical influences, I think, at an early age. And I had a lot of different musical influences, not just on my own, which was some of the rock music I mentioned earlier, but through my parents. Also a lot of exposure to a variety of music from jazz to classical to Broadway show tunes. They were big Broadway folks, so I actually love kind of Broadway show tune and that type of music, and kind of theatrical music. So I try to write stuff like that as well. So yeah, it really spans a gamut there, from pop tunes like the one you just heard, and like you said, definitely some folky stuff that I do as well, and I try to mix it up. It's also probably one of the reasons I'm drawn to a band like Phish, which is a band that also has a lot of very varied musical styles in their repertoire and in their catalog. So I'm drawn to that type of variety and those different styles and mixing them and seeing what happens when you take my playing style and apply it to different things. I mean, I'm not really a bluegrass player, but if I try and write a bluegrass song, it turns out sometimes to be something interesting because it's a mixture of styles.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting that you can pull together those different pieces and then create something new and different out of it. That's really fun. We are coming up to the last 15 minutes of the show. We've got Luna Overture to talk about because I know that's got a broader story to it. And why don't you talk a little bit about that? We're going to play that. Then talk a little bit more, and then we've got a longer piece that we're going to end with that you can chat about a little bit too. So talk about a little bit about Luna, and then we'll play that one.
Sure, and in reverse order, the piece we're going to end with is going to be a live Jed Luckless Band tune. So I'll just remind everybody, if you like the Still in Luv With You, and you like what you hear at the end of the show, you can check out the band specifically at jedlucklessband.com and get the band's calendar there. There's live recordings of every show we've ever played is on the website for free, so you can go listen to tons of our music. Or you also can find us on archive.org. All our shows are archived on the free live Internet Music Archive as well. Luna, is a good thing to bring up just because I mentioned Broadway shows and theatrics. So, I definitely am drawn to that type of music, and Luna is a piece of mine that is kind of in that vein and a theatrical piece. I also think there's a long tradition of, any good rock band having a theme album. So Luna is kind of my theme album, I guess, and I'm big on those types of bands, like progressive bands such as Genesis with The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, probably my most favorite album of all time, one of them definitely up there in the top 5. Bands like Yes with double albums like Topographic Oceans, obviously Pink Floyd and kind of thematic albums like Dark Side of the Moon. And there's a long tradition of that, and Phish has their version of that as well. So like any good rock star, I have my theme album, and it's called Luna, and it's really a story about which I wrote many, 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 many years ago, and is more relevant today than it ever was, because it's really about the deterioration of the Earth as a place for humans to live and the search for a new place to live beyond Luna and the stars. So that's what it's about, and the piece of music of the overture is really exactly what it says. It's an overture, just as you would have at the beginning of a musical or a theatrical production. You have kind of a musical overture, and that's what this cut is. And I actually recorded this for my solo album All at Once in 2010, and what I've done over time is sprinkled bits of that story over the various albums. So if you look at the JLB album, Roll the Tape, there's a cut called Ozone Blues. That's actually the second piece that follows Overture in the Luna suite. So when you look at the whole suite, it's spread across albums. And I'm actually, in the tour I'm doing now in Second Life, I'm also playing the whole thing kind of spread out through the tour across shows. So my fans who kind of know what it is can follow along with the story. So.
Very good. So let's hear Luna Overture. It's definitely an overture, I have to say.
There you go. It's aptly
there
named.
You go. It's aptly named. It's quite epic in its presentation. And having heard Ozone Blues, it's kind of an interesting pairing of those two because they're not the same in terms of styles at all.
And again, if you went through some of the other tunes in the suite, you'd see that there's also some folky tunes, as I was saying. So all those styles kind of show up throughout it. And
Well, it makes it a very interesting part of an overture of anything like that is the elements where things go up and down or move or shift. So it sort of really addresses that very nicely, I think.
Yeah, and I'm by no means a classical musician as far as my technique and my skills. You know, I'm not classically trained in any sense, but I did try and do that with that piece, which is to incorporate in overture fashion all the elements of the, you know, emotional elements of the suite of the music. And again, you know, if listeners want to hear more of that, they can tune into my tour that's going on. Maybe I could just spend a second and just let everybody know what's happening with the tour. You know, we're in the middle of what we're calling our 300 tour for summer 2014, and that's because, as I said, we've been doing this for 5 years, since 2009, and I'm coming up on my 300th show. So we've had 300 Jed shows, and that includes solo shows with the band over that time, over the 5-year period. So, you know, we're pretty proud of the amount of music that we've been able to put out there for people, and we love the fans again that have been following us around and been very supportive of this tour, which, as you mentioned, we focused on doing in Second Life in the month of August. We're doing 8 shows all over Second Life. And tonight is the next stop on the tour. It's 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tonight in Second Life at the Merry Prankster, and again on jedluckless.tv. So, you know, we hope you'll join us at a show either in Second Life or on Jed TV, and that's 9 p.m. tonight. We are also on tour Wednesday night at Dark Star in Second Life, and that's an 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time show. And again, that'll also be webcast on Jed Luckless TV. And then the tour continues the week after that with 4 or 5 more dates in August, and it all culminates with a big party for the 300th show. And, you know, we're having a great time. It's a bunch of fun new venues that we haven't played at in a while. We have particle light shows in Second Life, which is hard to explain here, but just come to Second Life and check them out. It's like Laser Zeppelin is what I'll say for those of you that remember Laser Zeppelin at the Hayden Planetarium. You get cool light show with the music. So we've been doing that. It's been great fun. And again, the tour focuses really on original music, on a lot of my original music. So if you like what you heard today, come check out a show. And thanks again for everybody's support. Really appreciate it.
Well, very good. I you know, we really probably haven't covered nearly enough of what we could have covered in terms of what's possible and what you're doing with your music and Second Life and just everything else and the whole process of music making. It's just a fascinating topic, and we've only just sort of scratched it in this hour. But we're going to end with a longer piece, which is the Victim of the Rhythm off your Jed Luckless Band Roll the Tape album, and that's going to be about 8 minutes. So we're going to close out with that, and people can just zone out and have a good time listening to that music. But do you want to talk a little bit about that piece before we sort of say our goodbyes here?
I do, and I also want to say, you know, I hope you'll have me back on the show and we continue. Now that we got all my promotional stuff out of the way, we can continue with a deep discussion about music creativity and all that good stuff. So I hope we'll have Jed and Sandra down to the Revenge or something.
Revenge of. Yeah, and I can move on to something harder than yogurt.
Yeah, there you go. So as far as the tune we're going to go out on, it's Victim of the Rhythm. It's off of our Roll the Tape CD, but it's a live cut actually of the band, so you can hear how the band sounds live if you come see us at a show or you tune into one of our live shows online. This one was from March 28th, 2014, earlier this year, at one of our favorite places to play called the Bayou Restaurant in Mount Vernon, New York. So I hope you enjoy it. Thanks again, Sandra, for having me on the show. It's been great fun today. I really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you, Jed, for being with us. And I just want to again say you can find more about Jed at jedluckless.com and JamminJedBand.com, as well as on Second Life Ustream and on YouTube. He is well covered out there on the internet. So let's listen to Victim of the Rhythm. And thank you, everybody, for listening in. Thank you, Jed.
That's on our original CD, and there's a stack of them over here on this table. And if you like it, take one home for free. Absolutely free CDs. So please grab one on your way out. They're over here.